I never thought my expensive snowplow would become a weapon of suburban warfare. But when the Oak Ridge HOA fined me $300 for not clearing my driveway within their ridiculous 2-hour window, I realized some battles are worth fighting. My name is Yates Patterson, and I moved to Oak Ridge, Minnesota 3 years ago after my divorce. The neighborhood seemed perfect at first. Rows of neat houses with manicured lawns, friendly waves from neighbors, and reasonable HOA dues. What I didn't realize was that the Homeowners Association was run by a woman named Patricia Henderson, a 52-year-old former real estate agent who treated the neighborhood like her personal kingdom. Patricia had short blonde hair that she kept in that classic "Can I speak to the manager" style. Designer athleisure where that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage, and an iPad that she carried everywhere to document violations. The winter of 2025 hit Minnesota hard. We're talking record snowfall, temperatures dropping to -20 degrees, and storms that rolled through every few days, dumping 8 to 12 inches at a time. I worked from home as a software developer, which meant I had flexibility, but it also meant I was always around when Patricia decided to do her violation patrols. I had purchased a personal snowplow last autumn, a beautiful piece of equipment that attached to my Ford F-250. It wasn't cheap, running me about $4,000, but I figured it was an investment. I could clear my driveway in 15 minutes instead of spending 2 hours with a shovel, and I'd even helped a few neighbors clear theirs when they were struggling. The plow was commercial grade, bright yellow with hydraulic controls, and it could push serious amounts of snow. The first incident happened on a Tuesday morning in January. A storm had rolled through overnight, dropping about 10 inches of fresh powder. I woke up at 7, made my coffee, and settled in for my morning stand-up meeting with my team at 8. My plan was to clear the driveway around 9:30 after the meeting and once the snow had fully stopped. The storm was still spitting flurries when I woke up, and there's no point clearing snow when it's still falling. At 8:45, my doorbell rang. I put myself on mute and went to answer it, finding Patricia standing on my porch in a bright pink puffer jacket, her iPad clutched to her chest. "Mr. Patterson," she said, her voice clipped and cold, "I'm here to inform you that you're in violation of Oak Ridge HOA Bylaw Section 12, subsection 4. All driveways must be cleared within 2 hours of snowfall cessation." I blinked at her. "The snow literally just stopped half an hour ago." 45 minutes ago, actually," she corrected, tapping her iPad. "I've been monitoring the weather radar. You have 1 hour and 15 minutes to clear your driveway or you'll receive a fine." "Patricia, I'm working." "I'll clear it when my meeting is done." "The bylaws don't make exceptions for work schedules, Mr. Patterson. 2 hours means 2 hours." She turned on her heel and walked back to her white Lexus SUV, which was parked on the street with its engine running. I went back to my meeting, annoyed but not overly concerned. I finished at 9:15, threw on my winter gear, and went out to hook up the plow. The process of attaching it to my truck took about 10 minutes, mostly because my fingers were freezing and I had to make sure everything was secure. By 9:30, I was clearing the driveway, pushing the heavy snow into neat banks on either side. The whole job took me 12 minutes. I was backing the truck into my garage when Patricia's Lexus pulled into my driveway, blocking me in. She got out, iPad in hand, and walked up to my window. I rolled it down. "You're in violation," she announced. "It's been 2 hours and 17 minutes since snowfall cessation. You'll be receiving a fine of $50. "Are you kidding me?" I said. "I cleared it as soon as I could. I have a job, Patricia." "The bylaws are clear, Mr. Patterson. This is your first violation, so it's only $50. Future violations will result in increased fines." She tapped something on her iPad, then walked back to her SUV and left. I sat there in my truck, furious. $50 for being 17 minutes late clearing my driveway. It was absurd. But I paid the fine when it showed up in my mailbox 3 days later, along with a sternly worded letter about community standards and property values. The second incident happened 2 weeks later. Another overnight storm, another 10 inches. This time, I was determined to beat Patricia's deadline. The snow stopped at 6 in the morning, and I was outside by 6:30, still in my pajamas under my winter gear, hooking up the plow in the dark. I cleared my driveway by 6:50, a full hour and 10 minutes before the deadline. At 7:15, as I was eating breakfast and warming up, Patricia rang my doorbell again. "What now?" I asked, not bothering to hide my irritation. "Your snow banks are extending into the street right of way," she said, gesturing toward the piles of snow on either side of my driveway. "That's a violation of Section 18, subsection 2. The fine is $75. I stepped outside and looked at the snow banks. They were maybe 6 inches into what could technically be considered the street right of way, though every other house on the block had similar piles. "Patricia, there's nowhere else to put the snow. And look," I pointed down the street, "everyone else has the same thing." "I'll be addressing those violations this afternoon," she said primly. "But you were first on my route today. You'll receive your fine notice within 3 business days." I wanted to argue, but she was already walking back to her SUV. I paid that fine too, along with an additional $25 in late fees, because I waited a week to send the check out of sheer spite. The final straw came in early February. We got hit with a massive storm system that meteorologists were calling a bomb cyclone. It dumped 14 inches of snow in 6 hours, starting at 3 in the afternoon and tapering off around 9 at night. The winds were brutal, creating drifts that were 3 feet high in some places. I didn't even try to clear my driveway that night. The snow was still blowing around, visibility was terrible, and it would have been dangerous to be outside with the plow. I went to bed around 11, planning to wake up early and take care of it. My alarm went off at 5:30 in the morning. I got dressed, had a quick breakfast, and was outside hooking up the plow by 6:15. The official snowfall cessation time, according to the National Weather Service, was 9:42 the previous night. I did the math in my head. That meant I had until 11:42 in the morning, which gave me plenty of time. I was wrong. Patricia showed up at 7:30, right as I was finishing up. I'd taken extra time to do a thorough job, clearing not just my driveway but also making sure the snow banks were well back from the street. I'd even cleared a path to my mailbox. "Mr. Patterson," she called out as I was disconnecting the plow. "I need to speak with you." "What is it, Patricia?" I was tired, cold, and not in the mood for another made-up violation. "You failed to clear your driveway within the required 2-hour window," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone of satisfaction that people get when they catch someone breaking a rule. "Snowfall ceased at 9:42 last night. You should have been finished by 11:42 at the latest. It's now 7:30 in the morning, which means you're 8 hours late." "Are you insane?" I said, my temper finally snapping. "It was the middle of the night, Patricia. There was a blizzard. It would have been dangerous to be out here with the plow in those conditions. The bylaws don't account for personal safety concerns," she said, and I swear there was a hint of smugness in her voice. "They simply state 2 hours from cessation. This is your third violation, which carries a fine of $300. Additionally, Since this is a pattern of behavior, the board will be discussing additional sanctions at our next meeting." "This is harassment," I said, my voice rising. "You're deliberately targeting me." "I'm simply enforcing the rules that all homeowners agreed to when they purchased property in Oak Ridge," she replied. "You'll receive your fine notice within 3 business days. Have a nice day, Mr. Patterson." She walked back to her SUV, and I stood there in my driveway, shaking with anger. $300. For not shoveling snow in the middle of a blizzard. It was beyond absurd. It was tyrannical. I spent the rest of that day researching HOA laws in Minnesota. What I found was both enlightening and depressing. HOAs had broad authority to enforce their bylaws, but they also had to follow certain procedures and couldn't enforce rules arbitrarily. The problem was that taking legal action against an HOA was expensive and time-consuming, often costing thousands in attorney fees for disputes over hundreds in fines. But then, I stumbled across something interesting. In Minnesota, neighborhood streets are typically public property, maintained by the city or county. That meant the Oak Ridge HOA had no legal authority over them, even though they acted like they did. And more importantly, if I was on a public street, Patricia couldn't do anything about it. An idea started forming in my mind. It was petty. It was probably going to cause problems, but after $300 in fines and months of harassment, I didn't care anymore. The next storm rolled in 3 days later. The forecast called for another 8 to 10 inches overnight. I made my preparations carefully. I filled up my truck's gas tank, checked the plow's hydraulics, and waited. The snow started falling around dinner time. I watched the weather radar obsessively, tracking the storm's progress. It was moving slowly, which meant heavy, sustained snowfall. Perfect. By midnight, we had about 7 inches on the ground. By 4 in the morning, it was over 10. The snow finally stopped at 6:15, just as dawn was breaking. I knew Patricia would be monitoring the weather too, planning her morning violation route. I got dressed, went outside, and hooked up the plow. But instead of clearing my driveway, I backed out onto Oak Ridge Drive, the main road that ran through our neighborhood. It was the only way in or out of Oak Ridge, connecting about 40 houses to the main county road a quarter-mile away. The street was buried under 10 inches of fresh snow. The county plows wouldn't be through until later in the morning. They always prioritized main roads first, which meant I had a window of opportunity. I started plowing, but not clearing. Instead, I pushed all the snow from the entire street into one massive pile right at the entrance to the neighborhood, where Oak Ridge Drive met County Road 12. I made pass after pass, building up a wall of snow that was 6 feet high and 20 feet wide. It was a beautiful monstrosity, completely blocking the only entrance to the neighborhood. It took me about an hour and a half. By the time I was done, the sun was fully up, and I could see lights turning on in houses along the street. People were waking up, getting ready for work, and they were going to find themselves trapped. I drove my truck back to my house, unhooked the plow, and parked in my garage. Then I made myself a big breakfast and waited. Patricia showed up at 8:30. I watched from my living room window as her Lexus came down Oak Ridge Drive, moving slowly. She pulled into my driveway and practically jumped out of her SUV, her face red with fury. The doorbell rang insistently. I took my time answering it, coffee mug in hand. "What did you do?" she shrieked, abandoning all pretense of professional courtesy. "You blocked the entire street. People can't get to work. There are cars stuck everywhere." "I cleared snow from a public street," I said calmly. "Is that a violation of some HOA bylaw? You know exactly what you did." "That snow pile is blocking the only entrance to the neighborhood," The entrance to the neighborhood is on a public county road, I said. The HOA has no jurisdiction there, I checked. You're being deliberately obstructive. This is sabotage. Actually, Patricia, I think the word you're looking for is malicious compliance. See, I took your enforcement of the snow removal bylaws very seriously. So seriously, in fact, that I decided to help out by clearing the entire neighborhood street. It's not my fault that the only place to put all that snow was at the entrance. I mean, you're the one who fined me for putting it in the street right of way, remember? Her face was turning an impressive shade of purple. You need to clear that snow pile right now. Why would I do that? I asked. It's not on HOA property. It's on county property. If it's a problem, maybe the county will send a plow to clear it. Of course, that could take a while. It's a busy morning for them. This is harassment. No, Patricia, what you've been doing to me for the past 2 months is harassment. This is just me clearing snow with my personal snowplow, which, by the way, I notice isn't mentioned anywhere in the HOA bylaws. You might want to look into that. She sputtered for a moment, then spun on her heel and marched back to her SUV. She peeled out of my driveway, spraying slush everywhere. I went back inside and watched the chaos unfold from my window. Within an hour, there were about 15 cars backed up on Oak Ridge Drive, all trying to get out of the neighborhood for work. People were getting out of their cars, walking up to the snow pile, taking pictures with their phones. Someone tried to drive through it and got stuck, their sedan buried up to its bumper in packed snow. My phone started ringing around 9. It was my neighbor, Tom Richardson. "Yates, man, did you see what happened to the street?" "Yeah, I saw it," I said, trying to sound concerned. "Crazy, right? Do you know who did it? I've got to get to work. I've got a meeting at 10. "No idea," I lied. "Maybe it was the county plow. County plows don't build walls, Yates. Someone did this deliberately." "Well, good luck getting out. Let me know if you need anything." The calls kept coming. I ignored most of them. The neighborhood Facebook group, which I barely ever checked, was blowing up with posts. People were angry, confused, and late for work. A few were suggesting they knew who did it, but no one had any proof. I'd been careful to do the plowing before most people were awake, and in the early morning darkness, the county finally sent a plow around 11. It took them 45 minutes to clear my snow wall. By then, people had been trapped in the neighborhood for nearly 4 hours. Some had called in sick to work. Others had missed important meetings. There was even an ambulance that had to take a long detour to reach Mrs. Kowalski's house when she had chest pains, though thankfully it turned out to be just heartburn. Patricia called an emergency HOA meeting for that evening. The email went out at 2 in the afternoon, marked urgent in red letters. All homeowners were required to attend to discuss the recent sabotage incident and new security measures. I showed up at 7, along with about 30 other residents. The meeting was held in Patricia's house, a large colonial with a professionally decorated interior. We all crammed into her living room, people sitting on couches, chairs, and the floor. Patricia stood at the front of the room, her iPad in hand, looking grim. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," she began. "As you're all aware, someone deliberately blocked the neighborhood entrance this morning, causing significant disruption and potentially endangering lives. There were murmurs of agreement from the crowd. I've reviewed security camera footage from several homes near the entrance," she continued, and my stomach dropped. I hadn't thought about security cameras. "And I can confirm that the person responsible was driving a Ford F-250 with a commercial snowplow attached." She looked directly at me. "So did about 20 other people. Yates Patterson was seen plowing the street at approximately 6:30 this morning. The snow wall was completed by 8. "Hold on," I said, standing up. "I was clearing the street. That's not a crime." "You deliberately blocked the entrance to the neighborhood." "I cleared snow from a public street and pushed it to the side. Where else was I supposed to put it? You fined me $300 for putting it in the street right of way on my own property." "You know exactly what you did," Patricia hissed. "This was retaliation for the fines you've received." "Which were completely unjustified," I shot back. "You fined me for not clearing my driveway fast enough during a blizzard. You've been harassing me for months with petty violations while ignoring the same issues at other houses." "That's not true, really, because I've got photos of at least 10 other houses with snow in the street right of way, but I'm the only one who got fined for it." Tom Richardson stood up. "Actually, Patricia, Yates has a point. You did fine him for being late clearing his driveway during that big storm. That was pretty harsh. It was the middle of the night." "The bylaws are clear," Patricia said, but her voice was less certain now. "The bylaws say 2 hours from snowfall cessation," I said. "They don't say anything about time of day or safety concerns. That's insane, Patricia, and you know it." Another neighbor, Sarah Chen, raised her hand. "I've been noticing that too." "Patricia, you've been really aggressive with enforcement lately. Last month you fined me for having my trash cans visible from the street the day after pickup, but I'd been at work and couldn't bring them in yet." "The bylaws state that trash cans must be stored out of sight within 12 hours of pickup," Patricia said. "But you didn't fine the Johnsons when their cans sat out for 3 days last summer," Sarah countered. The room erupted into discussion, people sharing their own stories of what they felt were unfair fines and selective enforcement. Patricia tried to regain control, but the tide had turned against her. "This is getting off topic," she said loudly. "The issue at hand is Mr. Patterson's deliberate sabotage of the neighborhood entrance." "I didn't sabotage anything," I said. "I cleared snow from a public street. If the county has a problem with where I pushed the snow, they can let me know. But the HOA has no authority over county roads." "You're twisting the situation to suit your narrative." "No. I'm pointing out that you've been abusing your authority as HOA president to harass homeowners with petty fines and arbitrary enforcement. This morning was just me following the letter of the rules, the same way you've been doing to me." An older man named George Humphrey stood up. "I think we need to have a serious discussion about how the HOA is being run. I've lived here for 15 years, and I've never seen this level of aggressive enforcement. It's making the neighborhood miserable." There were murmurs of agreement. Patricia's face was red again. "Fine," she said. "If that's how everyone feels, perhaps we should hold a vote of no confidence." "Actually, that's a great idea," Tom said. "I move that we hold a vote of no confidence in Patricia Henderson as HOA president." "I second," Sarah said immediately. The vote was 24-6 in favor of removing Patricia. She looked stunned, clutching her iPad like a lifeline. "This is absurd," she said quietly. "I've dedicated years to this neighborhood." "And we appreciate that," George said gently, "but things have gotten out of hand. We need someone who can enforce the rules fairly, not use them as a weapon." Patricia gathered her things and left her own living room without another word. The meeting continued for another hour, with the group discussing how to move forward. Tom was nominated as interim president until a proper election could be held. One of the first motions passed was to review all fines issued in the past 6 months for fairness. I drove home that night feeling vindicated but also a little guilty. I hadn't meant to start a revolution, just to make a point about the absurdity of Patricia's enforcement tactics. The next morning, I found an envelope in my mailbox. It was from Patricia, handwritten instead of the usual printed fine notices. "Mr. Patterson," it read. Your actions yesterday endangered the neighborhood and demonstrated a callous disregard for community welfare. While I may no longer be HOA president, I will not forget what you did. Be assured that I will be consulting with attorneys about potential legal action for the damages and distress caused by your snow wall. You may have won this battle, but this is not over. It was signed with a sharp, aggressive signature. I showed the letter to Tom when he stopped by later that day. "Yeah, she's not taking this well," he said. "She's been posting on Facebook about how she was betrayed by ungrateful neighbors. It's kind of sad, actually." "You think she'll really sue me?" I asked. "I doubt it. She doesn't have a case. You cleared snow from a public street, and while it was definitely a jerk move, it wasn't illegal. Plus, after that meeting, I think people would testify about her harassment if it came to that." Tom was right. A week passed, then two, and nothing happened. The $300 fine I'd received was reviewed and rescinded. So were the previous two fines. The HOA even reimbursed me the $125 I'd already paid. But Patricia wasn't done yet. In early March, I received a certified letter from a law firm in Minneapolis. My stomach sank when I saw it. Patricia had actually followed through on her threat. The letter alleged that I had intentionally and maliciously blocked the neighborhood entrance, causing significant emotional distress and financial damages to the residents of Oak Ridge. It demanded $5,000 in damages and threatened a civil lawsuit if I didn't pay within 30 days. I called Tom immediately. "She's suing me," I said. "Well, threatening to sue me. Her lawyer sent a demand letter." "You're kidding." "For what?" I read him the letter. He was silent for a moment. "Yates, I think you need to get a lawyer." I spent 2 days researching attorneys before settling on a guy named Marcus Webb who specialized in property disputes and HOA issues. He had a small office in downtown Minneapolis and came highly recommended. "This is harassment, pure and simple," Marcus said after reviewing the letter. "Patricia doesn't have standing to sue you for clearing snow from a public street. Even if she could prove damages, which she can't, you weren't acting in any official capacity or violating any laws. So what do I do?" We respond with our own letter explaining why her claim has no merit. We also point out that her pattern of harassment could constitute grounds for a countersuit. That should be enough to make her back off. Marcus drafted a response that was polite but firm, laying out exactly why Patricia's claims were baseless, and noting that continued harassment could result in legal action against her. We sent it off and waited. 3 days later, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Yates Patterson?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Detective Karen Morrison with the Oak Ridge Police Department. I'd like to ask you some questions about an incident that occurred on February 10th. My heart started racing. "What kind of incident?" "A resident has filed a complaint alleging that you intentionally blocked a public roadway, endangering public safety. Can you come down to the station to give a statement?" "Do I need a lawyer?" "That's your right, sir. But this is just a preliminary inquiry. We're trying to establish the facts." I called Marcus immediately. He agreed to meet me at the police station in an hour. The Oak Ridge Police Department was a small building on the edge of town, sharing space with the fire department. Marcus and I met in the parking lot and went in together. Detective Morrison was a tall woman in her 40s with short brown hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. She led us to a small interview room and pulled out a notepad. "Mr. Patterson, I'm investigating a complaint filed by Patricia Henderson regarding events on the morning of February 10th. Can you tell me what happened that morning?" With Marcus sitting beside me, I explained the entire situation. The months of harassment, the unreasonable fines, Patricia's targeting of me specifically. Then I walked through the morning of the snow wall, explaining that I had cleared a public street and pushed the snow to the side. "Did you intend to block the entrance to the neighborhood?" Detective Morrison asked. "I intended to clear the street," I said carefully. "I pushed the snow to the side. If that resulted in a pile that was difficult to drive through, that wasn't my primary intent. But you knew it would block the entrance." "I knew there would be a large pile of snow. People drive through snow all the time, Detective. It's Minnesota." She made a note on her pad. "Mrs. Henderson claims that you were retaliating against her for fines she'd issued as HOA president." Mrs. Henderson issued 3 fines totaling $425 for minor violations that were either unavoidable or enforced selectively. "Yes, I was frustrated, but I didn't break any laws. Intentionally obstructing a roadway is a misdemeanor in Minnesota," Detective Morrison said. "I didn't obstruct it," I countered. "I moved snow from the roadway surface. Where I pushed that snow is a different question. And as I understand it, county roads are under county jurisdiction, not local police." Marcus nodded. "My client was performing snow removal on a public street. While the result may have been inconvenient for residents, there's no evidence of criminal intent to obstruct traffic. The county plow cleared the snow without issue within a few hours." Detective Morrison looked between us. "Mrs. Henderson also claims that an ambulance was delayed reaching a resident who was having a medical emergency." "Mrs. Kowalski's heartburn," I said. "The ambulance arrived within 15 minutes. They took a different route. She was fine." "Still, you endangered public safety by blocking emergency vehicle access." "Detective, with respect, I moved snow," I said, feeling my frustration rising. "It was 6 in the morning. The county hadn't plowed yet. The entire street was covered. All I did was consolidate the snow in one location. If that's a crime, then everyone who shovels their driveway into the street is guilty too." She studied me for a long moment, then closed her notepad. "I'll be frank with you, Mr. Patterson. This complaint feels personal. Mrs. Henderson has been very insistent that we pursue charges, but I'm not seeing evidence of criminal behavior. Inconsiderate, maybe. Petty, probably, but criminal, I don't think so." I felt relief wash over me. "So what happens now?" "I'll file my report and recommend no charges. The county prosecutor will make the final decision, but I doubt they'll pursue this. They have actual crimes to deal with." Marcus and I left the police station, and I felt like I could finally breathe again. "She's desperate," Marcus said as we walked to our cars. "Patricia knows she doesn't have a real case, so she's throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. The police thing was probably her last resort. What do I do now? Nothing. Wait. If she keeps escalating, we'll consider a restraining order or a harassment suit. But my guess is this is the end of it." Marcus was mostly right. The county prosecutor declined to pursue charges, just as Detective Morrison had predicted. Patricia's attorney never followed up on the demand letter. But Patricia herself couldn't let it go. She started a blog called Oak Ridge Neighborhood Watch, where she posted long, rambling essays about the decline of community standards and the dangers of rogue homeowners who refuse to follow rules. She never mentioned me by name, but it was obvious who she was talking about. The social fabric of our once peaceful neighborhood has been torn apart by individuals who place their own convenience above the collective good, one post read. These selfish actors use legal technicalities to avoid responsibility for their destructive behavior, hiding behind expensive attorneys while the rest of us suffer the consequences. Most people ignored the blog. A few left sympathetic comments. But overall, Patricia's influence in the neighborhood had evaporated. She rarely left her house except to walk her small white dog, and when she did, She avoided eye contact with everyone. Tom, as the new HOA president, implemented a series of reforms. The 2-hour snow removal requirement was changed to 24 hours. Fines were reduced across the board. Most importantly, he established a review process where homeowners could appeal violations before fines were issued. The HOA should help the neighborhood, not terrorize it, Tom said at a meeting in April. We're all neighbors first. Spring came, and with it, the snow melted. My plow went back into storage in my garage. Life returned to normal, or as normal as it could be after the winter's events. Then, in late May, things took a darker turn. I was working in my home office when I heard shouting outside. I looked out the window and saw Patricia standing in Tom's front yard, screaming at him while he tried to back away toward his house. His wife, Jennifer, was on the phone, probably calling the police. I couldn't hear what Patricia was saying, but her rage was evident. She was waving her arms, her face red, her dog's leash dangling from one hand. I grabbed my phone and started recording video just in case. Within minutes, a police car arrived. 2 officers got out and approached Patricia, who immediately turned her fury on them. "About time you got here," she shouted. "This man is destroying the neighborhood. He's letting people violate bylaws left and right. He's incompetent." "Madam, you need to calm down," one of the officers said, a young guy with a name tag that read Officer Davis. "Don't tell me to calm down. Do you know what I've sacrificed for this neighborhood? Years of my life making sure everything was perfect. And they repay me by staging a coup and installing this idiot." Tom stood on his porch, looking shaken. Jennifer had come out and was standing beside him. "Madam, you're on private property and you're disturbing the peace," Officer Davis said. "I need you to leave." "Private property. This entire neighborhood is my property. I made it what it is." "Madam, that's not how property ownership works. You need to leave now or we'll have to take you into custody." Patricia lunged at Tom. It wasn't clear if she was trying to hit him or just gesture aggressively, but the officers immediately grabbed her arms. She struggled, screaming incoherently, and within seconds, they had her in handcuffs. "Patricia Henderson, you're under arrest for trespassing and assault," Officer Davis said as his partner led her toward the police car. I watched from my window, stunned. Patricia was still screaming as they put her in the back seat, something about lawsuits and conspiracies. Tom came over to my house about an hour later. He looked exhausted. "That was insane," he said, accepting the beer I offered him. "She just showed up and started screaming about how I was ruining everything she'd built. When I tried to go inside, she followed me onto my porch." That's when Jennifer called the cops. "Is she going to be okay?" I asked. "Who, Patricia?" "I don't know, man. I think she had a breakdown. Jennifer said she tried to grab me, which is why they arrested her for assault. I'm not pressing charges, though. I think she needs help, not jail time." "That's generous of you. She's a human being, Yates. Yeah, she made our lives miserable, and yeah, she's been awful since she got voted out, but she's also clearly struggling with some mental health stuff. I'm not going to pile on." Tom's compassion impressed me. I'm not sure I would have been as understanding. Patricia was released later that evening. The charges were reduced to disturbing the peace, and she was given a citation and a stern warning. But the incident had consequences. Her husband, Robert, who I'd barely ever seen in the 3 years I'd lived there, filed for separation 2 weeks later. According to neighborhood gossip, he'd had enough of Patricia's obsession with the HOA and what he saw as her deteriorating mental state. Patricia's blog posts became even more unhinged after that. She started posting conspiracy theories about Tom bribing residents to vote against her, about me using mob connections to threaten her, about the police being in on some elaborate scheme to destroy her reputation. "They want me silenced because I know the truth about Oak Ridge," one post read. "This neighborhood was built on land that was stolen from indigenous people, and the developers used money from illegal sources. I have proof, and they're afraid I'll expose them." There was no proof, of course. It was pure fantasy, the product of a mind that had convinced itself that everyone else was the problem. In June, Patricia's house went up for sale. The listing described it as a motivated seller situation, which usually meant a divorce or financial problems. She moved out in July, and I never saw her again. The new family that moved in was lovely. Young couple with 2 small kids, friendly and easygoing. They had no idea about the drama that had preceded their arrival, and I didn't see any reason to tell them. Tom continued as HOA president through the end of his term, then chose not to run for re-election. Sarah Chen took over and has done a great job, focusing on organizing neighborhood events rather than enforcing petty rules. The 3 fines I'd received were formally expunged from HOA records. Sarah even apologized on behalf of the board, though I told her it wasn't necessary. "We should have stopped Patricia sooner," she said. "A lot of people were suffering under her enforcement, but nobody wanted to rock the boat. You rocking the boat actually helped us all." I appreciated the sentiment, though I'm not sure I'd describe building a snow wall as helping anyone. My snowplow has continued to be useful. I clear my driveway every winter, and I often help out neighbors who are struggling. Mrs. Kowalski, who's in her 80s, always bakes me cookies as thanks. Tom's kids think the plow is the coolest thing they've ever seen. I never cleared the main street again, though. Once was enough. Looking back on the whole situation, I realize how easily HOA power can be abused. Patricia started with good intentions, I think. She wanted a nice neighborhood with high property values and well-maintained homes. But somewhere along the way, the power went to her head. Enforcing rules became more important than helping neighbors. Control became more important than community. The irony is that Patricia's aggressive enforcement led directly to her downfall. If she'd just been reasonable about the snow removal fines, if she'd shown even a little bit of flexibility or common sense, none of this would have happened. My snow wall was petty revenge, sure, but it was also the spark that lit a fire of discontent that had been smoldering for months. I learned some things from the experience, too. I learned that sometimes you have to stand up to bullies, even when it's uncomfortable. I learned that communities are stronger when they work together rather than letting one person dictate terms. And I learned that a snowplow, used creatively, can be a surprisingly effective tool for social change. The neighborhood is better now. People are friendlier, more relaxed. There's less fear of violating some obscure bylaw and more focus on actually being good neighbors. We have block parties in the summer and holiday decorating contests in the winter. The HOA still exists, but it's become what it should have been all along. A way to maintain common areas and organize community events, not a surveillance state monitoring everyone's trash cans. As for Patricia, I occasionally wonder what happened to her. Did she get help for whatever mental health issues she was clearly dealing with? Did she and Robert reconcile? Did she find another neighborhood to micromanage? I don't know, and honestly, I don't need to know. That chapter of my life is closed. It's winter again now, and we're expecting snow tomorrow night. 6 to 8 inches, according to the forecast. I've already got my plow ready, the hydraulics checked, the blade sharpened. I'll clear my driveway when the snow stops, probably helping a few neighbors while I'm at it. But I'll be staying well away from the neighborhood entrance. Some lessons only need to be taught once. The whole experience taught me that suburban life, which seems so peaceful and boring from the outside, can be just as dramatic and complicated as any other aspect of life. Behind every pristine lawn and perfect driveway are real people with real problems, conflicts, and egos. HOA, when run well, can be beneficial. When run poorly, they become petty tyrannies that make everyone miserable. I'm glad I stood up to Patricia, even if my method was juvenile and probably not the most mature way to handle the situation. Sometimes the system needs to be shocked into recognizing its own failures. My snow wall did that. It was visible, undeniable proof that the HOA's rules had become absurd and that enforcement had become persecution. The funny thing is, I'm not even really a rebel by nature. I'm a software developer who likes routine, quiet evenings at home, and the occasional fishing trip. I pay my bills on time, follow traffic laws, and generally try to be a good citizen. But when pushed hard enough, even the most mild-mannered person will push back. Patricia pushed me too hard, and I pushed back with several tons of snow. Would I do it again if I could go back? Honestly, probably not. It caused a lot of inconvenience for innocent neighbors who had nothing to do with my dispute with Patricia. People were late for work, stressed out, and stuck in their homes because of my actions. That wasn't fair to them, even if it made a point about HOA overreach. But I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret exposing Patricia's selective enforcement and bringing the neighborhood together to demand change. Those were good outcomes, even if my methods were questionable. Tom and I have become good friends since all this happened. We grab beers sometimes and laugh about the snow wall incident, though he always reminds me that his wife was not amused at the time. Jennifer had a huge presentation that morning, he told me once. She had to do it from home over Zoom because she couldn't get out of the neighborhood. She was furious. I know, I said. I'm sorry about that. It worked out. Her presentation went great anyway, and we got rid of Patricia. I'd say it was worth it. The legal threats never materialized into anything real. Patricia's attorney apparently advised her that she had no case, and after her arrest for the incident at Tom's house, she didn't have much credibility left anyway. The police investigation went nowhere, just as Detective Morrison had predicted. Marcus, my attorney, sent me a final bill in August that was surprisingly reasonable. He'd enjoyed the case, he told me, because it was a nice change from the usual property line disputes and zoning arguments he dealt with. You gave me something unique, he said. I've never defended someone for weaponizing snow before. I paid his bill with a smile. The neighborhood has settled into a new normal. The HOA still sends out newsletters and organizes events. We still have bylaws, but they're enforced with common sense now. If your trash cans are out a day late, you might get a friendly reminder, not a $75 fine. If snow removal takes a little longer during a big storm, nobody's timing you with a stopwatch. It's amazing how much better life is when people treat each other like human beings instead of rule-breaking machines that need constant correction. I've thought about writing my own account of what happened, maybe posting it online as a cautionary tale about HOA abuse, but I've decided against it. The story has taken on a life of its own in the neighborhood, growing with each retelling until I'm some kind of folk hero who stood up to tyranny with nothing but a snowplow and righteous anger. The reality is messier and less heroic than that. I was a frustrated homeowner who made an impulsive, petty decision that happened to spark a needed change. I'm not proud of blocking the street, but I'm not ashamed of defending myself against harassment either. Life is complicated. People are complicated. Even in suburban Minnesota neighborhoods with neat houses and two-car garages, human drama plays out in unexpected ways. My driveway is clear now. The garage is organized, and my snowplow sits ready for the next storm. I'm just another homeowner in Oak Ridge, living my quiet life and trying not to cause too much trouble. But I'll always have that one winter when I decided I'd had enough, when I took my personal snowplow and built a wall that changed everything. It was stupid, it was petty, and it was probably the most memorable thing I'll ever do. And honestly, despite all the stress and drama and legal threats, I'd be lying if I said I didn't get a little bit of satisfaction from watching Patricia's Lexus turn around that morning, unable to get past the wall of snow I'd created. Sometimes the little victories are the sweetest ones. The snow is starting to fall now, big fluffy flakes drifting past my window. The forecast has been updated to 8 to 10 inches overnight. I'll wake up early tomorrow, hook up the plow, and clear my driveway like a responsible homeowner. And I'll push the snow neatly to the sides, well within my property lines, following every rule and bylaw to the letter, because that's what you do when you live in an HOA neighborhood. You follow the rules, you respect your neighbors, and you remember that a little common sense goes a long way. Unless, of course, someone pushes you too far. Then all bets are off and the snowplow comes out to play, but that's a story for another winter, another time. For now, I'm just Yates Patterson, software developer and homeowner, watching the snow fall and feeling grateful that the worst of the drama is behind me. The neighborhood is quiet tonight, peaceful, exactly the way it should be. And tomorrow morning, when I fire up my truck and hook up that beautiful yellow plow, I'll clear my driveway efficiently and properly, staying well within the bounds of acceptable behavior, because I learned my lesson. Sometimes you win by following the rules, and sometimes you win by breaking them. But mostly, you win by knowing which battles are worth fighting and which ones are better left alone. Patricia never learned that lesson. I like to think I did. The snow continues to fall, covering everything in a fresh white blanket. Tomorrow will be beautiful, the neighborhood transformed into a winter wonderland, and my driveway will be clear, because that's what I do. I clear snow with my personal snowplow. Quickly, efficiently, and without blocking any roads. Well, not anymore anyway.